You want us to what? Supreme Commander Zixtal's secondary breathing apparatus wheezed in disbelief, causing ripples across their translucent membrane. Surrender immediately, repeated the human diplomat. Her expression remained neutral, but there was something unsettling about the way her lips curved slightly upward at the corners. You've got about 30 minutes to decide before our fleet arrives. The assembled Galactic Council representatives burst into what could generously be described as laughter, if one considered high-pitched chirping, resonant humming, and various forms of bioluminescent pulsing to qualify as such. This is unprecedented, declared Council Leader Vaktar, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns of barely contained amusement. A species that has barely achieved FTL travel, from a Class 12 death world no less, demanding the surrender of the combined galactic empires. The sheer audacity. The human diplomat, Sarah Chen, according to her credentials, simply shrugged. The casual gesture sent several of the more sensitive council members recoiling in their gravity chairs. Even after decades of contact with humans, their unpredictable movements still triggered deeply ingrained flight responses. Look, Chen said, pulling out what appeared to be an archaic paper notebook. I've got a whole speech prepared about humanity's resilience, our ability to adapt, and how we've turned our Death World origins into our greatest strength. But honestly, I'd rather skip the monologue and get to the point. You really don't want to fight us. Supreme Commander Zixtal's membrane shifted to a deeper shade of azure, their species' equivalent of a condescending smile. My dear Primitive, our smallest battlecruiser could vaporize your entire fleet. We have technologies you couldn't begin to comprehend. Weapons that could reduce your worlds to cosmic dust, and defensive systems that have protected our civilizations for millennia. Neat, Chen replied, making a show of jotting something down in her notebook. Quick question, though. How many of your species can survive being shot? The council chamber fell silent. What kind of question is that? Zixtal sputtered. Simple, really. See, one thing we've noticed about the combined galactic empires is that you've all evolved on gentle worlds. Minimal gravity, stable climates, low radiation, no predators. You've developed amazing technologies to compensate for your biological limitations. But here's the thing about humans. We don't really have biological limitations. Not by your standards, anyway. She stood up, causing several council members to emit warning pheromones. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Everything on Earth either wanted to eat us, poison us, or both. We've got redundant organs, a skeleton made of living rock, acid-producing glands in our digestive system, and a healing factor that would make most of your species faint just thinking about it. These are known facts. Council Leader Vaktar chimed in, their crystalline structure vibrating with forced patience. But they are irrelevant in the face of our technological superiority. Chen's smile widened. Are they, though? Because while you were evolving in your paradise worlds and developing energy shields and gravity manipulation, we were figuring out how to kill things bigger and stronger than us with pointy sticks. While you were achieving technological enlightenment, we were perfecting the art of turning literally anything into a weapon. You know what humans did when we first discovered nuclear physics? We didn't build clean energy sources. We made bombs. This is precisely why your species was quarantined, one of the council members shouted. You're violent, unpredictable, and resourceful, Chen interrupted. The word you're looking for is resourceful. And speaking of resources, did you know that humans can survive in vacuum for up to 2 minutes? That we can function in gravity up to 4 Gs with minimal assistance? That our bodies can repair radiation damage that would liquefy most of your species? The Supreme Commander's membrane had begun to pale noticeably. What exactly are you implying? Oh, nothing much. Just that while your ships are impressive, they're designed by species who've never had to think about things like manual override systems or physical emergency hatches. Species who've never had to consider that someone might actually try to board a ship in combat rather than engaging in civilized long-range warfare. She checked her watch. 20 minutes now, by the way, and our fleet's ahead of schedule. This is absurd, Zixtal declared, but their membrane was nearly transparent with anxiety. Even if what you say is true, we outnumber your forces 1,000 to 1. Funny thing about that, Chen said, closing her notebook. You ever wonder why humans are so obsessed with zombie apocalypse stories? It's because deep down, we all know that we'd kind of enjoy it. Not the tragedy part, mind you. The part where all our socially acceptable behaviors go out the window and we get to fully embrace our Deathworlder nature. The council chamber's environmental systems were working overtime to process the stress pheromones now flooding the air. Your species has developed amazing technology, Chen continued, but you've also developed an overwhelming reliance on it. What happens when the gravity goes out in your ships? When life support fails? When your crew has to choose between suffocating at their posts or trying to survive in conditions that humans consider merely uncomfortable? She stood up and straightened her jacket. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe your superior numbers and technology will prevail. Of course, that assumes you can find us when we scatter into the radioactive nebula that your ships can't navigate. Or catch us when we dive into gas giants that would crush your vessels. Or stop us from turning your own automated mining facilities into improvised weapon factories. This is barbaric. Council Leader Vaktar's crystalline form was vibrating with horror. No, Chen corrected them. This is survival. Something my species has gotten very, very good at. We don't want to fight you. Honestly, most humans would prefer to trade cultural knowledge and cool technology. But if you force this conflict, we will win. Not because we're stronger or more advanced, but because we're basically cockroaches with opposable thumbs and a grudge. The chamber erupted into chaos as multiple emergency communications channels activated simultaneously. Chen calmly returned to her seat, pulled out her notebook again, and began what appeared to be a game of tic-tac-toe. Supreme Commander Zixtal's membrane had become completely transparent, a sign of extreme distress in their species. You planned this. This entire demonstration of human capability was orchestrated. Honestly, we've been leaving hints for years, Chen replied, not looking up from her notebook. All those human entertainment videos we shared through cultural exchange, the ones you dismissed as primitive power fantasies, those weren't entertainment, they were warnings. We literally gave you a documentary called Independence Day showing exactly how we'd fight back against a technologically superior force, and you filed it under quaint alien fiction. A priority alert flashed across the chamber's holographic displays. Multiple council members began emanating panic pheromones as they processed the information. Ah, Chen said, checking her watch again. That'll be our fleet arriving early. Fun fact about humans, we tend to pad our schedules with extra time, just in case. Another survival trait from the death world. Always better to be early than dead. The Supreme Commander's atmospheric processor was working overtime as they processed this information. What are your terms? Same as they've been for the past 5 years. Full membership in the Galactic Council, unrestricted access to trade routes, and recognition of human space as a sovereign territory. Chen finally looked up from her notebook, where she'd actually been drawing a detailed sketch of Earth's solar system. Oh, and we want the trade embargo lifted. Turns out some of your species have developed quite a taste for human coffee, and we're tired of running it through black markets. The council chamber fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. The kind that comes when multiple advanced alien species simultaneously realize they've made a terrible mistake in judgment. We will need to discuss these terms, Council Leader Vaktar said carefully. Of course, Chen replied, standing and gathering her things. Take all the time you need. Our fleet will just hang out here, doing routine survival drills in your local asteroid field. You know, basic stuff, zero-G combat training, emergency breach protocols, testing how many of your automated defense systems we can repurpose with basic tools. That sort of thing. As she headed for the chamber's exit, she paused and turned back. Oh, and one more thing. We're going to need you to update your species classification system. Turns out Deathworlder isn't the warning you thought it was. It's a resume. The chamber doors closed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving behind a room full of advanced alien species. Suddenly very aware that their technological superiority might not be the advantage they'd always assumed it was. In the corridor outside, Chen finally allowed herself a genuine smile as she sent a brief message to the human fleet. Operation Cockroach is a go. Remind everyone to look extra enthusiastic during their survival drills. The response came back almost immediately. Roger that. Already have teams competing to see who can hotwire a defense satellite fastest. Current record is 2.3 minutes. Chen shook her head, still smiling. Sometimes the best way to prevent a war was to remind your opponents that humans didn't just survive on a death world, they'd conquered it. And compared to Earth, the rest of the galaxy was practically a vacation resort. The Galactic Council had spent millennia advancing beyond their biological limitations through technology. They'd never encountered a species that had evolved past those limitations through sheer, stubborn determination to survive everything the universe could throw at them. They were about to learn that the real threat wasn't the technology humans had. It was the fact that humans didn't need it to be dangerous. And if there was one thing Deathworlders excelled at, it was teaching object lessons that tended to stick forever. Supreme Commander Zixtal stared at the holographic display with what could only be described as existential dread. The human fleet, if one could call such a hodgepodge collection of vessels a fleet, was conducting what they termed routine exercises in the Pyrox asteroid belt. The sight was making their membrane fluctuate between various shades of distress. "They're doing what exactly?" Council Leader Vaktar demanded, their crystalline structure vibrating at a frequency that suggested imminent structural failure. The military analyst, a Centaurian named Kelox, manipulated the display controls with their tentacles. "According to our observations, the humans are practicing boarding procedures by launching themselves between asteroids using nothing but personal propulsion units." "That's not the concerning part," Zixtal interjected, their membrane now a sickly shade of gray. "Show them the footage from monitoring Station 7. The hologram shifted to show a human in what appeared to be a minimal environmental suit, manually rewiring one of the Galactic Council's automated defense platforms. The human was whistling, actually whistling, while working in hard vacuum. "This footage is accelerated, of course?" Vaktar asked hopefully. "No," Kelox replied, all four of their eyes blinking in synchronized distress. "This is real time. They're running some sort of competition. The human in this footage actually lost. They took almost 3 minutes to gain control of the platform. The current record holder did it in just over 2 minutes." The council chamber erupted into another round of panic pheromones. "But that's impossible," one of the junior council members protested. "Those defense platforms have quantum-encrypted security protocols." "Apparently," Kelox said, their tentacles twisting nervously. "The humans discovered they could bypass the quantum security entirely by physically removing the control module and replacing it with something they call a Raspberry Pi." "A dessert?" Vaktar's crystalline form briefly shifted to a confused frequency. "No, it's some sort of primitive computational device. They're manufacturing them in their ship's food synthesizers, along with something called duct tape, which they claim can temporarily fix anything in the universe." The hologram shifted again, showing multiple human ships now docked with various pieces of Galactic Council infrastructure. The vessels themselves were a bizarre mix of sleek military design and what appeared to be repurposed mining equipment. Are they having a picnic on the hull of our primary communications array?" someone asked in disbelief. "Yes," Kelox confirmed. "They call it lunch break training. Apparently, they're practicing emergency suit repair procedures while consuming nutrient packets. Several of them are using the array's thermal radiation panels as what they call a space grill." Supreme Commander Zixtal's membrane had developed a distinct twitch. "What about the containment protocols we implemented? The emergency shutdown codes?" "About that." Kelox manipulated the display again, bringing up a new set of readings. "The humans apparently found our emergency shutdown systems and improved them." "Improved them how?" Vaktar demanded. "They left a note. It reads, 'Your emergency shutdown sequence had 17 steps and required triple authentication. We streamlined it to 3 steps and added a manual override. You're welcome. P.S. We also fixed that weird clicking sound in the ventilation system on level 7. It was driving us nuts.'" The council chamber fell into stunned silence, broken only by the soft whir of atmospheric processors working overtime to handle the stress pheromones. "Get me the human diplomat," Vaktar finally ordered. "The one with the primitive paper recording device." Minutes later, Sarah Chen strode into the chamber, notebook in hand, and that unsettling slight smile still playing at her lips. "Having fun?" she asked, taking her seat. "Your species," Zixtal began, their membrane rippling with suppressed emotion, "has taken control of multiple defensive installations, modified critical infrastructure without authorization, and is currently using a Class A communications array as a cooking surface." "To be fair," Chen replied, flipping open her notebook, "the array makes excellent grilled cheese sandwiches. Something about the specific frequency of the thermal radiation. We're thinking of writing a cookbook. Survival cuisine, making the most of your hostile environment." "This is not a joke!" Vaktar's crystalline form vibrated with indignation. "Of course not," Chen agreed, her expression becoming serious. "It's a demonstration. Everything we've done in the past 6 hours has been accomplished without firing a single shot, or causing any permanent damage to your infrastructure. In fact, we've improved several of your system's efficiency ratings. Imagine what we could do if we were actually trying to fight." She pulled out what appeared to be another archaic writing implement, a red pen, and began making notes. For instance, we've identified 47 critical vulnerabilities in your defense network that could be exploited by, and I quote from our engineering team, anyone with opposable thumbs and basic tool-making capabilities. We've also discovered that your automated manufacturing facilities can be reprogrammed to produce emergency survival equipment using nothing but voice commands and creative interpretation of your safety protocols. Creative interpretation? Keylocks asked, unable to contain their curiosity. Turns out if you tell the system that the default safety settings are causing you psychological distress, it automatically grants override authorization. Apparently none of your species ever thought to exploit the mental health protocols programmed into your AI systems. The council members exchanged horrified glances. But perhaps most importantly, Chen continued, we've demonstrated that humans don't need overwhelming force or superior technology to be a threat. We just need gravity boots, duct tape, and enough coffee to keep us motivated. Speaking of which, she checked her watch. It's almost time for second lunch. Your defense platform's thermal panels really do make excellent grilled cheese. Stop! Vaktar's voice resonated through the chamber. Just stop. We will accept your terms. Chen's smile widened slightly. All of them? Yes, Zixtal interjected, their membrane now almost completely transparent with resignation. Full council membership, unrestricted trade routes, sovereign territory recognition, and the coffee imports. Excellent. Chen stood, gathering her materials. I'll inform our fleet to begin reversing their improvements to your systems. Although you might want to keep some of them, the emergency shutdown modifications really are more efficient. As she headed for the door, she paused once again. Oh, and one more thing. You might want to update your species classification guidelines. Specifically the part about technological advancement being the primary measure of civilization progress. Why? Someone asked. Because sometimes the most dangerous species isn't the one with the best technology. It's the one that can figure out how to turn their enemy's technology against them, using nothing but spare parts and stubborn determination. She patted her notebook. I've got some suggestions for the new guidelines, if you're interested. First line. If a species evolved on a world that should have killed them and didn't, do not underestimate their ability to survive anywhere else. The chamber doors closed behind her again, leaving the council to contemplate a future where they would have to share the galaxy with a species that viewed their most advanced technology as, in the humans' words, a fun puzzle to solve during lunch break. In the corridor, Chen sent another message to the fleet. Operation Cockroach successful. Start putting their toys back the way we found them, mostly. The response came quickly. Roger that, but can we keep the grilled cheese set up? The engineering team says they've finally perfected the optimal thermal frequency for achieving golden brown perfection. Chen laughed, shaking her head as she typed her reply. Document the modifications and file them as our first official technology exchange proposal. Subject line: Cultural significance of properly grilled cheese in human diplomatic relations. After all, if humans were going to join the galactic community, they might as well start by sharing the important things, like how to turn sophisticated alien technology into the universe's most advanced cooking equipment. Because that's what Deathworlders do. They adapt, they survive, and they make themselves comfortable wherever they end up. Even if that means teaching an entire galactic civilization that sometimes the most effective weapon isn't a doomsday device or a battle fleet. It's the ability to look at the most advanced technology in the universe and think, I bet I could make a sandwich with that. The Integration Committee meeting was not proceeding as expected. What do you mean you've already modified the atmospheric processors? Council Representative Mixtal's bioluminescent patterns fluctuated with alarm. Sarah Chen, now officially titled Human Integration Specialist, consulted her ever-present notebook. Well, we noticed the standard atmosphere mix was calibrated for maximum efficiency, rather than adaptability. We adjusted it to accommodate a broader range of species' physiologies. Without authorization? The Centaurian representative's tentacles coiled tightly. Actually, Chen replied, according to Article 7, Subsection 3 of the Integration Agreement, humans were granted authority to implement reasonable modifications to ensure mutual compatibility of shared spaces. We interpreted that to include breathing. Supreme Commander Zixtal, who had insisted on attending all integration meetings, let their membrane shift to a resigned shade of blue. And the gravity generators? Also adjusted. The previous single-setting system wasn't particularly inclusive. We've implemented variable gravity zones. There's even a zero-G recreation area in Section 4. The maintenance crews love it for training purposes. Training purposes? Someone asked weakly. Of course, emergency repairs in zero-G conditions are significantly different from standard maintenance procedures. We've been running certification courses. Several of your species have actually signed up. Turns out when you remove the environmental pressures they evolved with, some of your people are quite adaptable. The committee members exchanged worried glances. In the month since humanity had been granted full council membership, the humans had been enthusiastic about their integration efforts. About the defense systems, Mixtal began. Already compiled a full report, Chen interrupted, pulling out a significantly thicker notebook. We've identified and corrected approximately 347 critical vulnerabilities, implemented cross-species compatible emergency protocols, and established what we're calling the Universal Access Initiative. The what? Zixtal's membrane rippled with concern. Well, we noticed that most of your emergency systems were designed around specific physiological capabilities. What if a crystalline species needs to activate a control panel designed for tentacles? Or if someone with tentacles needs to use an interface calibrated for photosynthetic input? We've standardized everything to be accessible to all council species. That's actually quite thoughtful, admitted the crystalline representative. Exactly, Chen beamed. We've also started a cultural exchange program. Would you believe none of your species had ever experienced the joy of pillow forts? Pillow forts? The words seemed to cause physical discomfort to several committee members. Temporary recreational structures constructed from bedding materials. They're excellent for team-building exercises and emergency shelter practice. We've already scheduled the first Galactic Pillow Fort architecture competition for next month. The engineering department is particularly excited about incorporating zero-G design principles. She flipped through her notebook. Oh, and speaking of cultural exchange, the cooking classes have been a huge success. Turns out many of your species have been eating nutrient paste for millennia simply because no one ever introduced them to the concept of texture in food. The Centaurian delegation has become particularly fond of something they're calling space tacos. But what about security? Zixtal pressed. Surely these modifications present risks. Actually, Chen replied, our approach to security is precisely why these changes are important. You see, most of your systems were designed to be perfect, unchangeable, and therefore supposedly unbreakable. But that's not how the universe works. Everything changes. Everything adapts. By making our systems flexible, accessible, and constantly evolving, we make them stronger. She stood and walked to the room's holographic display, activating it with a gesture. A complex diagram appeared, showing the interconnected modifications humans had implemented across the station. Take this station, for example. A month ago, it was a marvel of engineering, but it was rigid. One critical failure could cascade through the entire system. Now, every system has redundancies. Every species can access emergency controls. Every potential failure point has been identified and given multiple backup solutions. We haven't made it perfect. We've made it adaptable. The committee stared at the display in silence. But perhaps most importantly, Chen continued, we've started teaching your people to think differently about technology and survival. Last week, a Centaurian engineer used a food synthesizer to create emergency replacement parts during a power fluctuation. 2 days ago, a crystalline maintenance worker figured out how to use their natural resonance frequencies to detect structural weaknesses in hull plating. This morning I saw a group of mixed species practicing emergency suit sealing techniques using nothing but standard maintenance supplies. She smiled. You see, being a Deathworlder isn't just about surviving harsh conditions. It's about learning to adapt, to improvise, and to share that knowledge with others. We're not here to make the galaxy more dangerous. We're here to make every species better equipped to handle the dangers that already exist. Supreme Commander Zixtal's membrane had shifted to a thoughtful shade of purple. And the pillow forts? Practice for emergency shelter construction, obviously, Chen replied with a straight face. The fact that they're also incredibly fun is purely coincidental. Speaking of which, the human delegation would like to formally propose an addition to the station's emergency protocols. Mandatory monthly blanket fort drills. Denied, Zixtal said quickly, but their membrane rippled with what might have been amusement. Worth a shot, Chen shrugged. Now about the proposed modifications to the council chamber's seating arrangements. We've noticed that the current configuration assumes all species are comfortable with the same spatial relationship to their colleagues. We have some suggestions involving swivel chairs. As the meeting continued, The committee members gradually realized that humanity's integration into galactic society wasn't just changing their technology. It was changing how they thought about adaptation, survival, and cooperation. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. A species that had mastered the art of turning survival skills into innovations, and innovations into opportunities for connection. Even if those connections sometimes involved questionable uses of food synthesizers and unauthorized pillow fort construction. Later that day, Chen added a new note to her ever-growing collection. Operation Integration Progress, Day 37. They're starting to understand that Deathworld survival skills aren't just about surviving. They're about helping everyone thrive. Also, caught Supreme Commander Zixtal testing the Zero-G recreation area after hours. Apparently, their species is surprisingly good at space somersaults. Note to self. Propose Zero-G dancing classes next week. Because in the end, that's what humans do best. They don't just survive. They find ways to make survival an art form. And sometimes, that art form involves teaching an entire galactic civilization how to build better worlds. One modified system, one shared skill, and one pillow fort at a time. The Galactic Council's annual security assessment was traditionally a somber affair of charts, projections, and carefully worded warnings about potential threats to civilized space. This year's presentation was different. And this is why we've implemented what we call the MacGyver Protocol, Sarah Chen explained, gesturing to a holographic display showing various everyday objects being repurposed into survival tools. Named after a legendary human problem solver, it teaches personnel how to use whatever materials are available to handle emergency situations. Supreme Commander Zixtal's membrane had developed an interesting pattern that appeared whenever humans presented their improvements to Council systems. You're teaching maintenance crews to make emergency seals out of food packaging? Among other things, Chen confirmed. The program has been remarkably successful. Last week, a photosynthetic engineer prevented a critical system failure using nothing but 3 food synthesizer cartridges and what humans call a rubber band ball. They've been nominated for the first annual Galactic Innovation Award. The Council Chamber, once a model of austere efficiency, now featured what humans termed adaptive seating arrangements and emergency resource caches, disguised as decorative elements. Several council members had actually begun carrying their own versions of Chen's notebooks. But what about the traditional emergency protocols? Asked Councillor Vakhtar, their crystalline form vibrating at what had become known as the mildly concerned frequency. Still in place, Chen assured them, flipping through her notebook. We've just added alternatives. Think of it as creating a survival multi-tool, rather than a single-purpose solution. Speaking of which, the cross-species survival workshops have produced some fascinating results. The holographic display shifted to show footage from various training sessions, a Centaurian demonstrating how their natural ink clouds could be used to detect atmospheric leaks, a crystalline being teaching others how to use resonance frequencies for structural analysis, a human showing a mixed group how to turn standard maintenance tools into emergency propulsion units. What we're seeing, Chen continued, is that each species has unique survival adaptations that can benefit others. The photosynthetics, for instance, have developed an entirely new method of emergency power generation based on principles they learned from human solar panel design. And the recreational additions? Zixtal inquired, their membrane shifting to what humans had dubbed the trying not to show interest but definitely interested color. All serve practical purposes, Chen replied with a straight face. The weekly Zero-G dance classes have improved emergency maneuvering capabilities by 47%. The interspecies cooking competitions have led to breakthroughs in resource utilization and xenobiology understanding. And yes, the Pillow Fort Engineering Challenge has actually resulted in 3 patents for new portable shelter designs. She paused, consulting her notes. Though I should mention that the engineering department's latest project, converting a defunct maintenance bot into what they're calling a space coffee delivery drone, is purely for morale purposes. Apparently, the demand for human beverages has exceeded our initial projections. About that, Vakhtar interjected, their crystalline structure emitting a slightly embarrassed frequency. The Council has received numerous requests to expand the designated coffee trading zones. Several species have developed what they term a critical dependency on your stimulant beverages. Ah, yes, Chen smiled. We've noticed that the unofficial coffee trading network has become quite sophisticated. Did you know that some of your species have started experimenting with their own blend modifications? The Centaurian cold brew is particularly interesting. They've found a way to infuse it with bioluminescent properties. The holographic display updated again, showing a complex network of statistics and adaptation metrics. But more importantly, this cultural exchange has led to unprecedented levels of interspecies cooperation. We're seeing voluntary cross-training initiatives, spontaneous problem-solving groups, and even informal survival skill-sharing sessions. Like the unauthorized maintenance shaft racing competition? Zixtal's membrane rippled with what might have been amusement, which has improved emergency response times by 62%, Chen pointed out. Though we do recommend implementing some basic safety guidelines. Apparently some species get a bit too enthusiastic about human concepts like shortcuts and speed records. She closed her notebook and addressed the council directly. What we're creating here isn't just a safer galaxy, it's a more adaptable one. Every species is learning that survival isn't just about having the right technology or the strongest defenses. It's about being able to work with whatever and whoever is available. And the humans' role in all this? Vaktar asked. We're just sharing what we learned on our death world. That the best way to survive isn't to become immune to challenges, but to become better at facing them together. Also, we're teaching everyone how to make emergency rations actually taste good, which some argue is our greatest contribution to galactic civilization. Later that evening, as Chen updated her reports, she added a new observation. Day 127 of integration. Witnessed Supreme Commander Zixtal participating in an impromptu zero-G coffee tasting session with representatives from 12 different species. Their membrane displayed what we're now classifying as the actually enjoying themselves but trying to maintain official dignity pattern. Also, the crystalline delegation has formally requested human assistance in designing what they're calling resonance-enhanced comfort zones, basically pillow forts calibrated to their specific crystalline frequencies. She smiled as she added one final note. Conclusion. Operation Integration has evolved beyond initial parameters. We're no longer just teaching survival skills. We're helping create a galaxy where different species don't just survive together, they thrive together. Though we may need to establish some guidelines about appropriate uses of maintenance bots. The coffee delivery drone now has a fan club, and engineering is getting ambitious about potential upgrades. Because that's what happens when you introduce Deathworld innovation to galactic civilization. Everyone starts finding new ways to make the universe a little more survivable, a little more accessible, and a lot more interesting. Even if it sometimes involves unauthorized robot modifications and glow-in-the-dark coffee experiments. The end.